with my mother and my grandmother preparing for the holidays. I remember the Sabbath when they were preparing for Sabbath, and I remember my grandfather and my uncles praying. My father told me that he was awakened at 5 in the morning. He heard explosions, and he turned on the radio and heard the announcer say that Poland was attacked. My father told me that he took me and my mother and my baby sister to my other grandparents' home, and because there was chaos and confusion and people really didn't know what to do, where to go. They were desperately trying to find someone who would be willing to take me and hide me. Maria was a nanny to one of my cousins, and she was half German and half Polish. Because she was half German, she had a few more privileges, and she agreed to take me. So one day my parents sat me down and explained that I was going to go with Maria, that I should be good, I should listen, and that we would be reunited very soon. My father was sent to the Krakow ghetto, and every morning he and other prisoners were taken to a local cable factory making electrical cables. He worked on an assembly line. He told me he kept a little photograph of me in front of him. He said the only reason he wanted to live was knowing that he gave me away and he had to find me when the war would be over. My cousin was able to obtain a birth certificate of a Catholic Polish girl about my age who had died, and I took on her identity. I became Christina Antoszkiewicz, and my nickname was Krisha, so I had a new name. I went to live in the refugee center. I was 10 years old when the war ended. There were about 70 children like myself, some older, some a little younger. I was very uncomfortable being Jewish for the longest time because I grew up hearing that was such a bad thing to be. I had First Communion, and I went to church. I was brought up Catholic. Now, what's interesting about the First Communion is that anti-Semitism after the war was extremely severe in Poland after the war, and there were several of my father's friends were murdered after the war. So my cousin's father survived as a Christian, and he didn't change back to being Jewish after the war. He continued to be Christian. Because he had to. It was safer. So he was the one who had me get First Communion, sort of as a decoy, as a protection for himself and his wife. So it took a long time for me to come to terms with being Jewish, and I came to the realization that what really helped me survive, emotionally survive, was just remembering my family and remembering some of the traditions and customs. I always minimized my own story because I didn't think it was that important to tell, because I was never in any camps. So I kind of devalued my experience. And until I heard other children, survivors, say the same thing. So I started to speak, I think it was early 80s. Well, one thing that I do with the students, I tell them that I'm a witness of history, and because they heard my story, that they all are witnesses, and I ask them for a very special favor. I ask them if they can tell my story to someone who's never heard me. And I know that my legacy will continue when I'm no longer here, because I know my children and grandchildren will continue to tell the story. Stand up to any kind of injustice, prejudice, intolerance. Be proactive and make good choices.